Hello everybody, Steve here, the retired hobby tech guy. And today what we're going to end up doing is we're going to turn down this volume a little bit and we're going to talk about a very important topic which you might have just seen flashed up on the screen. Matter of fact, let's just go right to it. No access for retirees on overseas military bases. Oh my gosh, the world, the sky is falling. Chicken Little is going crazy, pulling out her hair. And it is just absolutely crazy on what we're seeing with this. As I was drinking my morning latte, as some of you know, I'm partial to espressos and making my own and getting the freshly roasted beans and jump starting my day. And I have a salted caramel ensemble here, so we're starting off. So I was perusing the interwebs, and what ended up happening is I saw a post about how this person was trying to get access to the military base, to get access to the military bank, either community bank or Navy Federal Credit Union overseas here in Korea. Well, they weren't able to get on post. They could get on post, but they could not drive a car because they don't allow you to do that. Well, there's a caveat with that. If, even as a retiree, if I rent a car, I can't get access to the military base using the rental car. It's just a thing. It's kind of a weird thing. But all that aside, this whole thing came up and people started saying, no, you don't have access. Retirees aren't SOFA status. And, it's illegal for you to use the military banking, the community bank and the Navy Federal Credit Union, which community bank is an offshoot of military bank. But the problem is military bank and the community bank are really it's horrible service. I mean, the people that work there are great. I'm not saying that anything like that, but what I'm saying is it's not a full service bank like you would expect. And Navy Federal Credit Union is infinitely better. And again, we're not talking about people, you have good people in both places, but Navy Federal Credit Union offers better interest rates on your CDs, your savings, and it's just a way better experience than Community Bank. Community Bank is actually limited because they don't offer all of the services of a full service U.S. military bank. So with that being said, this next thing came up that no, retirees don't have access to military banks. You're not supposed to use the banks on post and blah, 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 blah. And next thing you know, I'm getting emails and messages. Hey, I just saw on this retirement RSO, whatever thing, and I'm like, actually, I got 3 messages. It wasn't a lot. Okay. So I'm hyped up the latte. So I responded back, and as I had got those 3 messages, it was easy because it was just click and paste to the other 2, and that this is absolutely not true. And unfortunately, we have military members that belong to that Facebook group or page, and some of these people are not retirees, and they said, no, retirees aren't allowed because they're not under SOFA. Actually, we are. It's just that we don't have the full SOFA agreement like U.S. military service members, their families, and contractors. Okay, we're low on the totem pole. Matter of fact, if we didn't have SOFA status, we wouldn't be able to get medical care, but we do and can get medical care at the Brian D. Allgood Hospital, but it's on a standby basis. So again, you need to get into the details. The devil is in the details, and for somebody to say that retirees have no access to military banks overseas doesn't know what we're talking about, doesn't know what they're talking about. So we're going to go over the information. And this is pretty important because I've already had 3 people contact me because they're thinking about retiring here in Korea like we did. And this, would put a wrench in the gears. It would stop, well, how do I get my money? Then I have to wire money from my American bank to my Korean bank account, and you're going to incur fees and charges and so on and so forth. Not the best of circumstances. You're going to lose a little bit of money, but not a significant amount. So it's neither here nor there. The big thing is if you're retiring overseas, you probably have the budget to do that. But it would be nice to have access to the military bank as a retiree. And I can tell you for the last 2.5 years, and I know many other people who have retired way longer in Korea have access to community bank and Navy Federal Credit Union. And they do not disallow retirees. So I think this is a case of, a well-meaning person that heard something from somebody else that heard something else from, the backyard lawyer, legal office person. Well, I heard and this, and they don't verify any of the information. So this can be problematic. And let's just jump right into it. I want to go over some information here. And access to Camp Humphreys and the military banking system. As a general rule, U.S. Army retirees are generally authorized access to the installation in Korea and Camp Humphreys and other bases around the world, but access is strictly governed by the U.S. Republic of Korea Status of Forces Agreement. And again, retirees fall under SOFA, but we don't get the full combo meal deal when we're talking about the SOFA status. So in other words, yes, I have access to the post, the PX, the commissary, MWR, all kinds of things, but I'm limited in the post office. I can only get 16 ounces of correspondent and medical packages. I can't just go Amazon shopping crazy. We're not afforded that because we're not on that full meal combo deal for the SOFA status. It's not automatic just by showing a retired ID card at the gate. Specific procedures usually apply. Now, I personally, I know that this is not the case, and this can be subject to change, but I've never heard of a retiree not being allowed on post when they showed their retired military ID. Retirees residing in or visiting Korea may fall under specific SOFA categories. Again, we are SOFA, it's just not, often requiring registration with USFK authorities to receive base access privileges. Now, I didn't really have to do anything. The only thing that I did was go to the legal office there and, of course, pass an ID. And then when we registered our vehicle, once we bought one, there are some things that you need to get approved, like owning a car and getting base access that way. But there are different rules. The key document governing the USFK regulation is 190-7, which is installation access control, and it outlines who is authorized access to the USFK installations. While the specific text can change, it typically defines the personnel categories on SOFA. Retirees are generally included, but often needed to apply for or receive a specific USFK retiree pass or registration status. And that's when I was talking about the registration status for your vehicles and so on and so forth. Especially for recurring access and use of ration control facilities, which back in the day you were limited in the amount of things that you could purchase from commissary, PX, Class 6, and so on and so forth. Apparently those things have been lightened up since I was here a long time ago. Short-term visitors access might be possible with just an ID card, and we know that that's the truth, but this must be verified locally. And of course, when you hand them your retired military ID card, they get the little computer scanner thing, and boom, you're verified. So anyway, Camp Humphreys specific procedures under the visitor information, pass and ID, access control, provost marshal, is the most practical source for the current procedures. Again, things change. We talk about one-day pass if you have visitors. It's not only just for retirees, but you can get multi-day passes. Some people have told me that you can have family members that can stay with you if you're at lodging or something like that. That I'm not sure on. So you would have to contact lodging, pass an ID to get the specifics on that. But when we talk about action requires always contact the pass and ID and check the Office Garrison website for current access requirements based on their specific situation, length of stay, residency status, so on and so forth. And this is exactly what I ended up doing. So when I was looking at the details, and before we even considered retiring and jumping off, selling everything that we owned and just coming to Korea, the devil is in the details. So I contacted Maud Hall in the legal office. I contacted Community Bank. I contacted Navy Federal Credit Union. And I figured with those three sources, I would be able to get a warm fuzzy in regards to can I do banking on post? Both of the banks said, yes, you can. Navy Federal Credit Union said, as long as you have an account before you get to Korea, you can have access. I guess there's just some stipulation in that. So I did that when I was in Hawaii. We got here to Korea and boom, we're good to go. Regardless of that, anybody can use the ATMs. So you can go that route as well. According to the Post Legal Office, which also did my will and last testament, they also said that yes, military retirees are covered under SOFA status, but not the full meal deal SOFA status, like military members and their family members and so on. But you are it's not like caffeine lattes, it's like a decaf. So retirees get the decaf option and you have access. You can use the banks, you can use the PX Commissary Class 6, all of those things, MWR, and other things like that. But yeah, apparently people freaked out when some military member said, no, retirees can't have access to the banks on post. And we just need to nip that right in the bud right there because I don't want any more emails, at least not like this. Trust, but verify. And again, I contacted the banks, I contacted the legal office. So with those three, I'm pretty sure it's a good deal. So let's get back to the information here. Access to banks on Camp Humphreys for military retirees if you have successfully gained authorization access according to USFK regulations. The community bank is operated by Bank of America and it's contracted by DoD to provide banking services. Again, it's not a 100% full service bank. There are better options, and that's why I recommend Navy Federal Credit Union. Eligibility. Retirees are eligible customers. Bing. So not only did I hear this in person from a supervisor at Community Bank, but also Navy Federal Credit Union, we have it here. Source reference, the official Community Bank website specifically outlines eligibility. Looking about us, facts, eligibility, and the language states military members, retirees, DoD civilians, and their families stationed or traveling overseas can have access to the military bank or the military community bank. Their mandate under the DoD Overseas Military Banking Program includes retirees. So yeah, I don't bring your backyard lawyer, I worked in or heard somebody say something about something and somebody said something. Humphreys location, Community Bank has multiple branches, excuse me, and ATMs on Camp Humphreys, like the one-stop building, mini mall, things like that. When we're talking about Navy Federal Credit Union, is a member-owned credit union serving all branches of the armed forces, DoD personnel, veterans, retirees. See, it says retirees there. Boom, right there. And their families. Eligibility. U.S. Army retirees and military retirees are explicitly eligible for membership. Again, the only caveat was that when I called Navy Federal Credit Union, they said I needed to open an account at a Navy Federal Credit Union before I came to Korea. For some reason, they just said, hey, you can't just be a retiree and then can open up a Navy Federal Credit Union account. I don't know why. It was a long time ago. It's like 3 years ago. Cited source, official Navy Federal Credit Union website clearly defines its field of membership. And there's the website. Eligibility criteria lists as veterans, retirees of all armed forces branches, so on and so forth. The Navy Federal Credit Union has a branch location and ATM on Camp Humphreys, and that's by the Maud Hall. Actually, it's across the street. You can figure it out. It's there. There's the Community Bank and Navy Federal Credit Union are real close to each other. So in summary, what we're going to talk about is, yes, Army retirees can have access to Camp Humphreys depending on security concerns. And with that standing, they do have access to those banks. So if you have access to the military base and everything is normal, threat con is normal, and then you can have access once you're, lawfully on Camp Humphreys. Army retirees can use the community bank according to the DoD mandate and the Navy Federal Credit Union, as Army retirees are within the NFCU's field of membership that you can find on their website. And again, everything is going to come down to the access to the base. So in other words, when we're talking, as long as everything's normal, I've never had a problem in the last 2.5 years, and the times when we visited Korea just on vacation, never had problems accessing the base. They scanned the military ID, retiree ID, and boom, we were allowed in. Me, my wife, no problems whatsoever. So what I find problematic is people that say stuff like this, oh, retirees aren't covered under SOFA. They don't understand that there's different levels of SOFA, the Status of Forces Agreement, and retirees at the very bottom. So while we can't get Amazon boxes through the military APO AP mail system, we can get 16 ounces of correspondent and medical packages from doctors and so on and so forth, parts, supplies, CPAP, whatever it is that you're getting, replacement limbs and, hearing aids, stuff like that fall outside of that 16-ounce limit. We do fall under SOFA status to some degree. So to make the leap that military service members can't use the overseas banks on post is absolutely rubbish, as our friends across the water would say. So anyway, I wanted to clear this up and let people know because, I'm sipping the morning latte and checking the email, and next thing you know, I check the website and socials, and there's big arguments on this, and military members say, no, you can't have access, you can't use the banks. And then even had, I'm assuming it's a military retiree, that he was told that retirees could not get access. And he got that from, I can't remember if it was the bank or Navy Federal Credit Union. But again, I'm going to have to refer back to the information that I just showed you. And then the fact that when we visited Korea, went to the community military bank, and again, I also called and verified at another time, and then we stopped by Maud Hall in the legal office to ask, hey, what do retirees, what do I have access to, and what do I not have access to? And the folks there were very kind to explain that, yes, you are covered under SOFA, you have access to the banks, the PX, all of that stuff. There's some limitations on mail. You can register a vehicle on post. So, they were very helpful, and I just want to pass this information on. And this right here is not true, so we're going to make that go away. Boom, just like that. Trust but verify. And, the barracks lawyers and the retiree lawyers, you can say whatever you want, but you need to back up what you say. And unfortunately, I've seen a lot of this since I've been retired in Korea. I've had military retirees living in Korea telling me that retirees and foreigners cannot buy property in Korea. And it's like, that's 100% not true. I bought this apartment that we're in. So how did I do that? And, if you buy property in Korea, you need to get permission from the Korean government. And I can buy property whether I'm on vacation, I can buy it while I'm on a long-term visa. Hell, I can buy property in Korea sight unseen and just do everything online. People do that. There's a lot of Chinese, there's a lot of foreign nationals from different countries that are buying up property sight unseen. In other words, they're not coming to the country, walking through the property. They're just looking at the listings, and they're buying land and apartments, houses, condos, things like that. So, if somebody tells you that foreigners cannot buy property, currently at this time that I am speaking, which is Wednesday the 16th, foreigners are allowed to buy property, and I have the title to my apartment. So, you can. There's another thing that came out that somebody ended up saying, another myth that has been busted is that foreigners can't buy property because they can't get financing here in Korea. That is absolutely untrue as well. There's a lot of foreigners that have bought properties, apartments, houses, things like that here in Korea that required financing from Korean banks. But the thing is, you're still going to have to go through showing your income, showing your expenses. They're going to do that whole calculation thing to see if you're good credit risk. And again, your credit risk is going to come into play. And depending how much you have for a down payment, what is your income? How long have you been working at that place that you receive income from? There's a lot of foreigners who have gotten financing through Korean banks. But again, you're going to have to go through that assessment period with that bank to see if you're a good credit risk. But to go off the handle and say foreigners can't get financing in Korea, that's not true. So we need to put a stop to that as well. Other people have said that U.S. banks will not finance a property overseas. With that, I did a little bit of research into that and the few banks that I contacted because, again, in preparation for possibly going to Korea, I checked with a couple of banks and they said usually they do not. But that was just for those specific banks. I think I checked with two or three banks. But they said because they don't have access to the property, and if I defaulted on that loan, how would they take possession of the property? So according to those three banks that I contacted, they said, yeah, we don't do that. But I don't know if that's the case with every single U.S. bank. So again, it's going to come down to profit and loss, income, expenses, and the policies of the individual banks. So, but thankfully, being retirees and the majority of the people like me and my wife who moved over here had paid off their houses in the United States, and so they had a big chunk of money, so they were able to buy properties outright here in Korea. So that's kind of a non-issue. But I find it disingenuous when people, the backyard lawyers, kind of like the weekend mechanics, will say one thing without trusting or verifying any of the information just because they heard it from somebody. In one instance, there was a guy who says, well, you can't buy property here in Korea. That was the statement that he said. And it's like, well, I bought property. He says, no, you can't. It's against the law. And it's like, well, where did you hear this from? I'm kind of interested. And he was a fellow retiree and older than me. And I said, well, where did you get this from? And he said, well, he knew a guy, a retiree, that tried to buy property here in Korea, and he went to a Korean bank, but he didn't get approved for financing. And so he couldn't buy the property. I said, okay, so he didn't get approved for financing. That's a different issue than is he allowed to buy property or not? And the guy's like, you could see the gears grinding in his head, and he goes, huh. And I said, yeah, I bought my apartment in cash and just had to get permission. It's another few extra forms that you have to fill out, with the Korean government and stuff, and your Korean realtor, if they're, smart on this and have experience in it, will have everything, cross the T's, dot the I's, and, or the T-goots and the neons, whatever it is. They will do all that, and you show up, and yeah, it's a pretty painless process. But foreigners can buy property. So when I explained this to him, I said, yeah, so the guy that you were talking to, he said he couldn't buy property. So I think what you misheard him say is that he didn't get approved for financing, so that's why he didn't buy a property. Not that he couldn't buy property at all. So yeah, it's just one of those things that coming away, and whenever I hear something, it's like, okay, where did you get that? Where's the proof of that? Tell me, who did you talk to, and how did you come to this conclusion? I'd like to see references. I'd like to get some information because I want to verify that. It's not like I'm talking down to people, but if you're making a claim like that, kind of like retirees can't use on-post banks, you better bring the proof, because now you're doing a disservice thinking that, oh, you're all this, you're hot shit. But in fact, where's the proof? Well, I heard somebody. No, that's not proof. You need to go to the sources, the banks, the legal office, someone pass an ID, so on and so forth, and actually get verifiable information. And as we just went over, the information's out there. It's just some people, I think they have good intentions, Excuse me. I think they have good intentions, but I think their zeal and their good intentions kind of minimizes them providing proof. If you can kind of see what I mean. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting little deal. So my recommendation, before you jump off retirees and you come and retire in Korea like me and my wife did, and many other couples that have done the same, the reason we could do that is because my wife is a returning Korean national, so her visa was an F4 visa, mine was an F1. It's now changed the name to an F3, I think it is, but it's still I'm a spouse of a returning Korean national on an F4 visa. But check the banking, check the military post and the legal office, contact Mod Hall and pass an ID. But the legal office is a real good one because they know the ins and outs and the legalities, and they can answer the majority of your questions for general stuff like that. As for specifics like vehicle registration, of course, you're going to contact vehicle registration office. So yeah, check all that stuff before you jump in and before you accept anybody's 2 cents as being gold. Trust but verify. Have them show you the proof because not showing proof can lead to people saying, hey, well, if I can't get access to the military banks and I can't use them, I'm just not going to retire in Korea. And wouldn't you be pissed? Wouldn't you be pissed if you knew that you could retire early and you wanted to retire early in Korea and your sole reason for not doing that was based off of some unsubstantiated information of some backyard army lawyer, wannabe lawyers saying, oh, retirees aren't under SOFA and retirees can't use the banks on post. It's against the rules. There's always those people. But always ask for proof and then take that proof because sometimes the devil is in the details, and when you actually call and contact these people, you will find out some very interesting information. And again, all you're doing is verifying information. It's not to make the person look bad or anything like that, but you verify the information. You do your own due diligence. And I'm just sharing what information was passed on, what we have experienced, and of course, I just showed you the proof. And call the banks, call the offices, and you can get your own verification. So with that being said, that is it for today's video. If you have any questions, concerns, you can always email me at the email address down below, officialthevariedlife@gmail.com. I have successfully answered every single email I get. Not so much the comments on my YouTube videos because I'm getting too many of those, but every single email I've answered, even the crazy people. And we're all crazy. So that means that we're all family. So it just gives me a warm fuzzy. With that, if you want to do me a solid, like and subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate that. And if you really want to do me a solid, you can buy me a coffee, kind of like these people did here, and the ticker that's scrolling. Those people have bought me coffee, and I have much respect for them. So anyway, that's going to be it. The final word is yes, military retirees, if you have access to the military base, you can use Community Bank and Navy Federal Credit Union. Trust and verify. All right, I'm going to finish my latte, and we will see you on the next video. Peace. Yeah, good stuff.